Yes, we are live, Simone. A
Yes.
very good morning. Good morning at your place, and a very good evening to everybody in India. Welcome to Building the Future Together series. And today we have with us Simone Sauter, a PR strategist and publicity coach. And we are going to talk about, does press releases work? And if they don't, what works? So, welcome, Simone, to Building the Future Together.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure hosting you, Simone. And you are from the land of tulips, and that makes it more special because I love flowers and I love nature. And let me tell all the viewers about you. Simone is a best selling author and a tech nerd. She helps coaches to get more clients by being featured in the media so that they can rise above the noise online, skyrocket their income, and make a bigger impact. And yes, very rightly said, today, in the COVID times, I have seen so many coaches coming up, and it's very interesting that you do this. And Simone has built her online coaching business in the relationship niche, specializing in breakup coaching solely with PR, and became Germany's #1 breakup coach in less than 2 years. Her website organically reaches more than 1 million people within 2 years, and she has created an advertising value of more than 3 million euros. Wow, these are like real big numbers, Simone, I must say. And Shimon has been featured in Cosmopolitan, InStyle, Closer, and many more. She has been on several podcasts and radio shows as well as on TV. Moreover, she wrote a best-selling book with a well-known German publishing house on how to overcome heartbreak, and created the first German online coaching program for overcoming heartbreak, which helped hundreds of women. Well, that's very interesting, Simon. Here in India, also, a lot of women go through a lot of heartbreak, and so does men. And it's interesting to know that you created a niche in this area. It's really nice and inspiring. However, presently she is a PR strategist and a publicity coach. She holds a university degree in journalism and public relations. She's a certified PR consultant from German Press Academy Berlin, and is a certified NLP and hypnosis master practitioner. Wow, that's like really nice. You are a bundle of great things put in together. And furthermore,
Thank
she's
you.
worked with PR and social media manager for the world's biggest online dating website, and brings an 8 years of experience as a freelancer at radio station to the table. Simone grew up in Germany, lived in Ireland and Australia, and has been digital nomad for 3 years, mostly located between Asia and South Africa, and settled in the Netherlands in 2017 for good. She's married to a Dutchman and a mother of wonderful daughters. So welcome again, Simone, and I'm really thankful and honored to have you on this chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Simone, when we were discussing offline, our major focus was on, your breakup coach journey. However, the topic is about publicity, public relations, and press releases. So tell us something about, first, let's talk about a little about you, that how this transition from being a breakup coach to a publicist happened for you.
Well, for me, I started my coaching business can you hear the sound double?
No.
Okay, perfect, because I can hear a double, but if you hear me clear, that's perfect. Okay, so I started my relationship coaching business, my breakup coaching business in August 2014. And then I worked as a breakup coach for almost 5 years, 4.5 years. On my journey as an entrepreneur, I met so many other coaches and entrepreneurs who had amazing missions and visions and gifts, that they wanted to share with the world, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to reach people. So many people try to build a social media following, which is exhausting and it takes a long time. And also they invest money in advertising, which also doesn't work if you don't know your ideal client, really, really well, and you also have to invest a lot of money in testing. And a lot of people, a lot of coaches don't have that budget, right? So
Yes.
what I thought is, why do I not train them to be their own publicist, right? Because there are certain steps that you need to take, as you know, right? To get in the media, you have to have some knowledge around it and also some practical approach. And there was like, okay, I start another business and I see how it goes. And it very quickly became super, super busy, so busy that I stopped coaching my my breakup coachees. I finished the coachings obviously, but I didn't take on any new clients. And now I only sell my products with them, my courses, my books, my workshops, and I only solely focus on my PR coaching, right? So teaching other coaches how to become their own publicist.
Wow. Okay, tell us. That's like really interesting, Simone. Coaching individuals to become their own publicist. Wow, this is like really nice. I will take some tips from you and maybe work something here in India as well. Tell me something. We are our focus is press releases, and in the world of PR, press releases are tools used the most.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the status of press release in today's time? How relevant are they? Are they relevant or are they not? Are they redundant? Or how do we use a press release in today's time?
Well, for it depends. If you work in corporate, if you work in a huge company, I have a corporate background, so I worked for Siemens and for Daimler and for Google. So if you work in a corporate and you already are an established brand and people know you, then press releases can work, right? Because they create attention, or they get the journalist's attention just because it says the brand of the company. But if you are a one-man show or if you're a smaller company, press releases just don't work. That is my personal experience. So with my coaching business as a breakup coach, I started to send press releases because I had this corporate background and I didn't get anything back, right? So I needed to find a way how to approach a journalist. And it is just the most effective if you find that single journalist in that media outlet who is responsible for your topic and covers your topic, your niche, and then write a personalized pitch. Also, I talk to a lot of journalists, and many don't open the email if it says press release, and many even have filters who scan the emails and delete them automatically if it says press release. And why? Because so many press releases are either bad, or companies, they send press releases for everything which isn't really newsworthy, right? So it is newsworthy for the company, but it's not newsworthy for the journalist and for the audience. And that is, I think, a switch that lots of companies need to make and ask themselves, how can I actually give value to the journalist? Because if you add value to a journalist and if you make their lives as easy as possible, then they will also want to work with you. But if you send a press release for a new employee, or if you have an open day in your company that people can look around, that's not interesting, Or also, I know lots of also coaches who send press releases or try to send press releases once they publish their book. It's not interesting for a journalist if you published a book, because so many books are published every day. You need to find a story that is connected to your book, right? So if you want to do PR for your book, then find a story, tell the story. Why did you write the book? For whom is it? How did you come up with the idea? Because there is always a story behind it, a personal story. And if you look into the media, if you look into a magazine and you open it, you find 90% of the content are personal stories. It's people like you and me who share their story. And that is what people want, right? They want to feel something. So a story needs to evoke emotions. They want to identify with that person. So, and you can't do that with a press release, right? Not as an individual or as a small company.
That's a very valuable information which you have shared, Simon. Let me ask you: Do you think that a good story gets ignored or dumped in a press release at times?
No, I actually think the story would be ignored, but the press release will be ignored if, if for example, your subject line says press release, right? So you can have the greatest story. It doesn't matter if it's a press release or an email, whatever. If your subject line in the email isn't good, the journalist doesn't even open it, because the journalist gets between 100 and 300 emails per day, depending on the media outlet. They get so many emails, they can't go through all of them. So one of the most crucial things is to actually craft a subject line that stands out and that really speaks to the journalist. But then also avoid like the click and bait thing, like write a really interesting headline and then, share a story that is not related to the headline, right?
Yeah, that's exactly was my next question. That what role does a content play, and what role does a heading play in a press release? Because here in India, we realize what you're saying is completely, we believe in that, and we promote that with our clients. But there are times when clients come to us and say we want our brand name in the heading. That cannot be the case, because a journalist will never pick up a story like that.
No.
So how important is a heading to a press release?
Well, it is. I mean, the headline, I mean, if you say press release, then when I talk about the headline, that I talk about the subject line in the email, right? So that is the most important thing, right? And I mean, if you use the same headline in your press release, that's fine as well. It is one of the most important aspects to your pitch, your headline, because if that headline doesn't really get the journalist's attention, they don't even read what you have to say. And you can have really the most amazing story where the journalist would be, wow, I'm so grateful you shared this with me. But if you're not able to actually bring that across in your subject line, then it doesn't matter, because no one will read it.
Yes, we have a lot of audience joining in from India, Simone. This is Braj
Hi.
Jha, and he's saying crucial elements nicely identified subject line is important indeed. That's exactly what I tell my team, that please do not send, press releases like, hoard to everybody, write special headings, special subject lines to that special journalist and the special newspaper, because everybody will look at a different perspective to your story.
Exactly. And I mean, coming back to what you said with having the brand name in the headline, I know that many clients want that, and I also have coaches who ask me that question. But what I always say is, then if you want that, you need to send an email to the advertising department, because that what you want to do is advertising. So advertising is, you want to control the message, you want to share what you want to share, and you can do this, but then you have to pay for that. But I don't know how it is in India. I assume it's the same thing. In Europe, journalists aren't allowed to advertise. A job of a journalist is to share stories. And of course, there are ways how you can talk about your company and your business and, reach your ideal client and share or make them identify with you. But you can't do this in the subject line. You need to find a story angle that is interesting to the journalist, interesting to their audience, and then find a way how to connect it with your company or with your product, your service, whatever it is.
Yes, we have a very senior editor joining us in this chat. It is Mr. Vinod Behel. He's saying, in my 40 years career, I always begin my story with a catchy header. Of course, we know that, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Tell us, Simone, like you said, we deal this in India very often, wherein clients want their, name in the heading, and we definitely advise them not. Because if we send the name in the heading, it sounds very promotional, and the journalist doesn't even read the story, even if it is very interesting. Right?
Exactly.
So how do we bridge the gap?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you have to say. It always comes down to you need to find a story angle that is entertaining, that is interesting, that evokes emotions, that is memorable, or that is contradictive, right? So what I often did when I pitched a journalist for my breakup coaching business, I sent a pitch with a headline: everybody should suffer from heartache at least once in your lifetime. And that is something that journalists would be like, what? What? No one wants to suffer from heartache, right? So people would be like, that can't be true. What's the story behind? And then I share my story, right? And then I talked about my company. So why did I do that? But I always shared the why. So I said, oh, my ex left me after 10 years relationship. I went through a hard time for 2.5 years. I decided that I wanted to help other people to overcome that faster. And then I made the bridge to my company, right? So then I can share with them what it is that I do, right? And then people read in the magazines or on podcasts, hear it or whatever, what I do and why I do it and what my experience is. And it's the same thing as a PR coach. When I say to a journalist, PR press releases are the worst tool that you can, the worst PR tool that you can use, then they would be like, what? Why? Because press release is the first thing that people connect to PR, right? If you do PR, you send a press release. And in my opinion, that is not true.
Okay.
So yeah. And that's also very contradictory then. Then, I can say like, yeah, I also share my story. How did I, how did I get there? And why do I think press releases don't work? And what is my personal experience? And what do I teach my clients? So yeah, and that is how you can bridge it, right? You always need to find something that is interesting to the audience, because the job of a journalist is to entertain the audience, to find something that is consumed. Because online, it's all about the clicks, it's all about the duration of the time that people are on the website and how much they read of the content and all these kind of things. So it needs to be catchy, and having your company or your brand name in the headline isn't catchy, right?
Right.
So
And in India, let me bring the India perspective here. You know, I personally am in the PR sector for nearly 23 years, and the press releases definitely used to work back then.
yeah.
But if I look at now, right now, press releases don't work until and unless, very rightly identified by you and put on record, that press releases work for large organizations or organizations which have already made a space for themselves, and the media is looking out for news from them. Yes.
Yeah.
But when we are working with the smaller segment or SME, we call it small and medium sized enterprises or individuals, press releases really do not work as such. But in terms of reaching a large media universe, isn't press release still used to we reach out to the large media universe? Because how will anybody reach a large media universe, because the media universe is very, very large.
It is right. I mean, the thing is, if you send a press release and if you send it to hundreds of journalists, it's like throwing spaghetti to the wall, right? We send something out and we hope someone will respond. And what I teach my clients is to really approach every single journalist individually. That really drastically increases your chances of getting featured. And then also I teach them to follow a system, right? So we start small. If you haven't had any publicity, we start small, because everybody comes to me and they say like, I want to be in Forbes, I want to be in Cosmopolitan, I want to be on TV. Yes, of course we want that. Everybody wants that. And this is also something you can definitely achieve. I have clients who achieved it. I achieved it myself. So it's definitely possible, but that's not where you start. So that's what people have to understand. So you start with your own website, right? As an individual, as a coach or a small business, you share your content there. You position yourself as an expert there, because a journalist, if you pitch them, they always will go to your website and they will check on you. They will see, okay, who is that person? What do they have to say? Are they credible? And so, and then you start with guest posting, right? You pitch someone and you pitch smaller media outlets online, and then you go for bigger ones. And then at the same time, you get into podcasts and YouTube channels. And then after some time, you go for newspapers and magazines, and then radio and TV, right? So it really builds up. But if you pitch Forbes today and you haven't been featured anywhere else, chances are you still have the chance. It depends on your story, right? But if they check your website and if you haven't been featured anywhere else, then the chances are lower than if you have built up like an online presence already, right? So
Okay. So what you're saying is what I get. I use a word called media brands media. So which means if I am, wanting to build my personal brand, and if I am not in, I want to be in Forbes, but if I am also featured in magazines or newspapers, other newspapers, Forbes will definitely go and look at it, and then analyze my profile for their magazine.
yes,
That's
exactly.
exactly right.
Exactly. And also, sorry, and also what I found in my personal experience and also with my clients, and that's the beauty about PR, right? This is why I love PR. Once you get featured, so for me, it's usually between the first 3 and 5 publications, depending on where it has been, something really amazing starts because people start to reach out to you, right? So podcasters will reach out, bloggers will reach out, of course, clients will reach out, but also other journalists. I had so many journalists reaching out to me saying, "Hey, Simone, I've read your story on this and that magazine, or I've seen you, I've heard you on that podcast. Would you also be willing to share your story with my magazine, newspaper, whatever?" So if you do it the right way, then some sort of a snowball effect will, set in place, and then if you maintain your PR and if you're constantly busy with it, not constantly, but like 2 hours a week, then you can just be present on a very large scale. And that, from my experience, to come back to your question, is more effective than sending a press release to a couple of hundreds of journalists, right?
Yes, you very rightly said that, Simon. But I would like to share something like in India or even in the US or other countries. Still, PR agencies like us or PR consultants like you, who work with organizations, we take up projects which are press release oriented, and that's a question from the editor as well, Mr. Vinod Behel. He's asking, how do you look at the role of agencies promising to get press releases published for a fee? Because it normally happens that we take a lot of companies come to us, we have something to announce and we want to do a press release, even if we will tell them it might not work or it might work. So a lot of agencies, including ours, take a lot of projects which are press release based.
Mhm.
So what do you think of that? Number one. Number two, inbuilt in that question is that does dissemination strategy helps in covering of press releases effectively?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult question for me, to be honest, because there are a lot of great agencies and great publicists out there, but there are also agencies and publicists who promise their clients they will be featured everywhere, and then they send out press releases and they will tell their client, we send it to 500 people, but unfortunately, nobody responded. I had people coming to me saying, I worked with a publicist, not with an agency because they're too expensive for my clients, and it didn't work for me, right? So there is a lot of, I have to build a lot of trust with my clients because they say, it didn't work for me. So, and I worked with this publicist, so I don't believe that PR is for me. And I think that it can be very frustrating for clients if they work with an agency who is only working based on press releases. But then also on the other side, if I look at an agency, I also understand that it is more difficult and much more expensive to sit someone down or to have someone who is reaching out to journalists individually. But in my opinion, that brings more results for the clients at the end of the day. It's more work, it's more research. But then as an agency, you can also build up a database and have these personal relationships, right? And when you have these personal relationships, it's also easier to reach out to these journalists, and if they perceive you as an agency who always brings reliable information and is reliable in general and brings great clients and great topics to the table, then I also think it's a win-win situation between the journalist and the agency, because I know a lot of journalists also struggle with agencies because unfortunately, just as with publicists, there are less good ones out there who actually ruin the business for the good ones. So yeah.
Yes, I completely relate to that. Okay, tell me one thing which you just mentioned, that have a good personal relations with media and drive earned stories, as we call it, or get into the editorial space. However, in India right now we are seeing, and especially with COVID, post COVID now, we are seeing a lot of paid media coming into the limelight, and even the editorial is getting converted into advertorial. So what do you have to
Mhm.
say to that?
Yeah, I think it's challenging, but I also think the earned media will stay, right? So earned media is basically when you do just for the visitors, when you do the PR outreach and you get featured for free just by, sharing your story, and paid media as advertising or advertorials. So I think it is challenging, but I also think that there always will be slots available for earned media. And yes, it will become more challenging to get those as the advertorials are on the rise. And, I mean, companies need to make the money, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I think people can still make it there.
Yes. Okay, tell me, because our topic is press release and do they work or not. Now, if there is an area where one has to do a press release, what are your tips on writing, or what are your suggestions or recommendations for coming out with a good press release, good content? What are your tips that one should have it in a good press release?
Well, I mean, as I said, the headline is very important, and then with a press release, always start with the most important facts, because a journalist is under continuous time pressure, and they really, they also tend to forget things because there is so much to do, and they have to sometimes cover up to 10 stories per day. So always start with the most important information. What is it that you want to share? Why should the journalist care? Why is it interesting to the journalist's audience? Not why is it interesting for you as a company? Why is it important for you to share that? Right? It's not important for a journalist. Again, that is advertising, right? If you want to just blast everything out around your company, people need to understand that that if the easier they make a life of a journalist, the higher the chances are to actually get published, right? Because imagine you're a journalist and you work in a very busy media outlet and you have to cover up to 10 stories per day. And as someone's coming around the corner and says like, look, here I have this on a golden plate for you. There is an amazing story. I have thought everything through. It is targeted to your audience. It's exactly what you write, what you usually write about. And then maybe you news check it and you say like, and this actually also relates to the last story that you covered, right? So, and that is, it's a little bit of training and a little bit of thinking and doing research. But if you do that, and if you find that one person and you offer this perfect story, then it is the chances are really high to get featured. And then for a press release, I mean, obviously it shouldn't be longer than one page. Also, don't write in like font 11 or whatever, that it's really small. Make it easy to digest. When I was back in corporate, I also used bullet points so that a journalist can just screen it, can see, okay, in the first paragraph, what is it about? Why should I be interested? And then map out in bullet points what the story is about, and what your story angle is. And then underneath, it's like, who are you and why are you credible? Now, as I'm speaking about an individual or also a smaller company, have you been featured anywhere else? That's what I write in the email, right? Just to build a little bit of credibility so that the journalist also knows this isn't the first interview. This isn't the first time that he or she's doing it. If you don't have that as an individual, then you can also refer out to your blog, for example, so that people know that you can write, that you also talk about those topics, that you're an expert, and then your phone number, your email address, and your website, and that's it. Oh, and calls for action, obviously, like, please, if you're interested, please let me know. If you have any further questions, I am here for you, or whatever, so that the journalist knows, okay, now I gave you the information. Now it's your turn to come back to me. And if they don't react, then I usually follow up, depending on how time sensitive the topic is. So between 3 and 5 days, usually working days. And I follow up once, sometimes twice, depending on the media outlet. But if they don't come back to you, like, then don't be annoying, right? Like, then just pitch another story. Maybe or just pitch the same story in a different subject line. Maybe they haven't opened your email.
Yes.
Maybe it's
And
interesting.
that's exactly what Mr. Vinod Bahl is saying. He's saying many a times put off by disjointed press releases, badly lacking in proper intro and concluding para. Yes, exactly. Because what happens is it is not the problem at the PR end. It is a problem at times at the corporate end because they want such specific words to be used, specific ending, and as a person who's working with the media for so many years, that boss,
Yeah,
this isn't going to work. But
I know.
yes, we do get that.
Yes, I totally understand. I used to work in corporate, and my boss was also like, use these words because this is our company language. I was like, a journalist doesn't really care about our company language. A journalist just cares about simple language that is understandable for him or her and their audience. They don't. If you want to use our language, then we have to do advertising, right? This is the big difference. So if the journalist doesn't understand what you want because you talk in your specific language, and if the audience doesn't understand, there is no point to actually have a story at all, right? So
Yes.
it's really crucial to make it as simple as possible. And yeah, that's just.
Yes. Simon, that brings me to the next point, and we'll just have another two, three questions. Is that you mentioned that, follow up with the journalist. Now, the main reason why corporates or companies, even smaller companies, want to do press releases is that they want to expand their sphere of influence. And they expect that if they do a press release, it'll get published in every newspaper and every online platform on the same day. And that's the reason they want to do a press release, which was the case maybe 20, 23 years, 25 years back.
Yes.
But that is not the case right now. So that's the reason they are probably stuck with that kind of a mindset. Let's do a press release and it'll get published. With that kind of reality which is available right now, that press releases are still going out and there is a demand of sending out press releases. What is the kind of follow up strategy would you suggest for any PR or an individual himself to, get the press release printed, the follow-up strategy?
Well, for press releases, I think it's challenging because the only way you could follow up on the press release would be to call the journalist, actually, because you usually send this with a tool like Meltwater or Cision or whatever, so you don't send it from an individualized email account. So probably you would have to call the journalist, which in my opinion is the worst thing that people can do because you never know when it's a good time for them and they are under time pressure. So if you follow up, I would always follow up with an email. And then what I teach my clients is, forward the email that you have sent, so the actual pitch, so that the journalist can read it underneath the email, and then say like, hi, I've sent you this pitch a couple of days ago. I was wondering if you're interested. Maybe you haven't had the chance to read it or something like that. I've resend it underneath. And I think it's really an interesting story for your audience. Please let me know if you're interested. And if they don't come back to you, then again, I always tell my clients, don't be annoying, right? Don't be the person who's, blacklisted in their mind because they can read your name and they say, oh, this person again, and I know there are people who really want to get the press and they really want to get featured. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Again, and I know I refer a lot to that. If we want to have a safe spot in the media, we need to pay for that, and that is not PR, that is advertising.
Yes. Okay. So then tell me, what is the alternative? Because the clients are looking at mass printing of news. They are looking at every newspaper or most of the newspapers printing their news, and online's carrying their news. And if press releases are not so effective, then how can they? What tool can they use to have that mass publicity? because mass publicity is what they're looking at times.
I know, but you don't. With sending press releases that other. I would think I would start to educate the clients and explain them that there is no mass publicity. They think there is mass publicity because the press release got sent to 500 journalists. But if they don't read it, if they don't respond to it, if they don't print it, there is no mass publicity. So what I would educate them on, what I basically do with my clients is explain them why that is, and why it is much more effective to send a one-on-one email, right? At first, it sounds like more work, but because the chances of getting featured are so much higher, it's actually less work. Because if you send one press release after another, it's like throwing spaghetti to your wall. And also, sometimes journalists are not interested. Sometimes journalists don't cover that topic. Sometimes journalists just covered that topic, and or for whatever reason, right? So for me, it would start. So I'm very strict with my clients with that. So, but that's also my personality, right? I don't. How do I say this politely? I don't do any of these BS, right? So I'm
Yes,
I'm
got
just
it.
like I like, okay, this is how it is. This is how I work. And of course, there are people who's like, yeah, but if you don't send press releases, I don't think it works. I mean, I have my testimonials, I have my own journey. So, but I'm just very strict with my clients. I'm like, okay, look, this is how I work. I know how it works. I don't send press releases. If you want to send press releases, I'm not the right person for you. So, and yeah, but as an agency, it isn't that easy. You can't send away your clients, say like, I don't need you, just do it yourself. But what you can do, maybe you can do like a little video training or like a little, um, introduction training that people have to watch when you onboard them. And then you say like, probably you wonder how our working style is. So we want to let you know that we don't work with press releases because. And yeah, I mean, there certainly will be people who will say, I don't believe in that. But then on the other way around, I'm also a strong believer that you will attract the exact right people, by doing that, and by also having a very clear positioning and say like, okay, this is what I do and this is what I don't do. And this is why.
Absolutely. And Mr. Vinod Bahl is saying, and thank you, Mr. Vinod Bahl, for staying for so long. He's an editor with the magazine. He's saying companies need to realize that in wake of Corona crisis, when newspapers have shrunk, they have to scale down their expectations on publication of press releases. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. That goes. Yes. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Simone, for such valuable information. And while I'm talking to you, I feel as if you are not in Netherlands or Germany or working with US clients. I feel you have been working with Indian clients because you're exactly talking our language, which is very locally understandable, and which makes me realize it's the same in both the worlds. The challenges are
Yeah.
same. The opportunities are same, the way we are working are same. Even here also, press releases, we tell our clients press releases are not working anymore. And I think we are, the globally we are on the same level, whereas the entire PR world is concerned. So thank you, Simon, for such wonderful information and valuable insights into press releases. And before we go, I would like you to conclude it for people to take some suggestions from you.
Well, as I said, um, don't send press releases, send a personalized email. And when you send the email, say hi, write the name in the right way of the journalist. Don't mess up the name thing. And like, um, find something that you can build rapport on, right? If it's a last article or that the journalist knows that you actually follow his or her work, and then pitch your idea, and then introduce yourself quickly with an elevator pitch, saying who are you, what do you do, and whom are you doing it for, and then sign off with your phone number and your email address and your website, and you're good to go. So I think that is the most important thing from all this conversation. Don't send press releases, send individualized emails.
Wow, great. Thank you, Simon, for coming as a special guest on Building the Future Together. We did do this every Friday, and we bring the series as our company has turned 20, and this is the entire year
Awesome.
we'll be doing this series on every Friday. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, and thank you, audience, for being there. Thank you, Mr. Vinod Bell, Payal, BK Jha, and all others for being there throughout the chat. And I would request everybody to have a look at this chat again so that you get these insights into why you don't need to do a press release or why when you should do a press release. So thank you, Simone, once again. And bye, everybody. Will be back next Friday.
Thank you for having me, and bye.